our favorite from Sports Illustrated, and DAZN talking hoops and boxing with our friend Chris Mannix here on the Rich Eisen Show. You know, I know the Celtics and the Nuggets played last night. Anthony Edwards was awesome as well. But I based on, certainly on the conversation we just had off the air, we got to start with the fact that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson are fighting. Wow. On Netflix.
Shocking.
This is, where the hell did this come from?
I mean, it's been in the works for some time now. Yeah. Jake Paul just this past weekend beat a guy named Ryan Borland, who is a oil rigger in North Dakota. So Jake was on...
He's running out of people to fight?
Exactly. Jake, the last couple of fights, has been going down this traditional boxing path. Now he is making the hard pivot back to celebrity boxing, yes. And he's doing it against arguably the biggest star in modern boxing history in Mike Tyson. I was taken aback by this, Rich, because I knew that Jake had been on the hunt for a big name. I just figured it was going to be someone like Conor McGregor, who has expressed interest in fighting Jake in the past. A rematch with Tommy Fury, who Jake fought last year. I didn't think a Tyson fight was going to happen, but here we are with the biggest, or one of the biggest social media stars ever, biggest or one of the biggest boxing stars ever, fighting on perhaps the biggest global platform ever. I think this is going to be an event unlike any other.
So anybody who gets Netflix will just be able to just watch that like you're watching the latest Adam Sandler movie?
It's
like, is that basically what it is?
Details are still, there's a couple of details still scant. One is, well, it's not going to be pay-per-view. It is going to be on Netflix, right. So it's going to be streamed.
You just have to pay for Netflix. Right. That's about it.
Exactly. And because of that, I think this has the potential to be the most viewed boxing event ever. I mean, there have been some widely watched boxing events. If you go back to the 70s and 80s when this was on basic television, ABC fights, those put up huge numbers. This one, though, I could easily see this fight attracting 100 million viewers. Because globally, Tyson has a name. Amongst a young audience, Jake Paul has a huge name. So I think, regardless of what you think of what this fight is in the ring, yes. And we can get into that, that the audience for this is going to be absolutely massive.
Massive. So what is a 58-year-old Tyson going to look like against, how old is Jake Paul again?
Jake Paul is 27, so a 31-year age gap between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. Jake Paul has been an active fighter. He fought 4 times in basically one calendar year.
Yes.
Mike Tyson has not been in the ring since that Roy Jones exhibition 4 years ago. I know people have kind of pointed to Mike's social media pad work, but Mike himself has come out and said, like, every time he does one of those mitt sessions, he needs like a week to rest and take time off and let his body recover. So you've got the once styled baddest man on the planet, yes, who perhaps can muster 30 good seconds of power punching against a YouTuber turned boxer who has become, in my estimation, a pretty good boxer. So that's a long way of saying I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to see in the ring on July 20th.
Which is maybe its greatest selling point from the Netflix point of view, or Jake Paul and Tyson. But
on a real note, though, Rich, yes, like I do wonder what the state of Texas is going to do there. Now, this was billed in the press release as, I'm maybe going to say this wrong, a boxing mega event. They didn't say like a sanctioned 10-round fight. Yes. And that's probably because Texas has to figure out what they're going to do with it, right? If they make it a exhibition like we had with Roy Jones and Mike Tyson, shorter rounds, six rounds, that's one thing. If they allow it to be a traditional fight, which I really can't fathom. Like, how can you sanction Mike Tyson
at age 58?
At 58?
He was using a cane a couple months ago, wasn't he?
The craziness of all this against a 27-year-old guy in Jake Paul, who, say what you want about him, he can punch. He really can punch. That's the great unknown in all this.
Oh my God. Well, when was Tyson here? 8 years ago? 7 years ago?
Yeah.
You want to just quickly look it up? Sure. Because he was sitting in that chair. It's the one time he's been here in the studio. And I've told this story before, so for those out there listening who... March 2015,
yeah,
right?
March of 2015.
Okay, so we used to have a radio clock where I would have to take a 60-second break right around now, middle of the hour, at some point. It was at my discretion. And I didn't really like it because, again, in the same way that you just mentioned, like, busting up a flow, a conversation's going well. I knew I would have to stop it in the middle for a 60-second break. And I wasn't a big fan of it sitting from this chair. Certainly when Tyson's coming here, I wanted to get a conversation going. So that said, I asked Tyson right around now in the hour, hey, how many rounds can you give me right now? And so this was 2015. This is 9 years ago.
Yep.
Okay. So just as he's about to turn 50, I'm like, how many rounds can you give me right now? He goes, I don't want to answer that. And I said, why? He said, because anytime I think about, getting back in the ring or anything associated with the boxing, it puts me in a very dark place. At which point I'm like, well, let's take that break right now. And I was happy to take a break. He says, it puts me in a dark place. So maybe he gets out there. That's like, what are we going to see? What will we see if he really, the old Tyson potentially just shows up even for a flash? Look, you know what I mean? Like
Tyson, when he fought Roy back in 2020, actually looked pretty good. And there were times during that fight that I thought to myself watching it, I'm like, if Mike turns it on and really lets his hands go, he's going to knock Roy out. I mean, Roy, another long since faded former great, I think he was even more punchy at that point. And Roy was a smaller fighter coming up in weight to fight Mike Tyson. But I remember watching that fight thinking, like, if Tyson wanted to, he could dial it back, land a big left hook, and this fight could be over. So I still think that's in Mike Tyson's repertoire. That's why, like, the first round of this fight against Jake Paul, if Mike wants to make it interesting, it could get really interesting. If it goes beyond that, I remember when Mike retired in 2005, he was bad, right? He got knocked out by Kevin McBride. He had no passion for the game, didn't want to be in boxing anymore, was only there for the paycheck. Then he went on and did, I think, one or two of those exhibition fights that were weird with headgear. But if he wants to just turn back the clock for a very brief period of time, I think he can still do it. That's why I think the first round, if he decides, if he becomes, go back to when he fought Peter McNeely. Peter McNeely, remember that fight, came just bull in a china shop, rushing Mike Tyson, which was insane because then he got his clock cleaned right after that adrenaline rush left him. If Mike comes out and goes right at Jake Paul, I don't know what can happen.
You're saying there's a chance, though.
I think, look, but again, it's not even a round, forget that, like 30 to 40 seconds. Because after 30, 40 seconds, he becomes a nearly senior citizen in the ring. All right? And look, it's different because Evander Holyfield was not the puncher that Mike Tyson was. And Evander Holyfield fought a guy named Vitor Belfort, who is big, strong, and a little bit crazy. But if you watch what happens to an old man in the ring when they're in with a young, strong guy. Evander Holyfield, when he fought in Florida a few years ago, he got a beating. And that was tough to watch because at some point you're watching and going, all right, this isn't fun anymore. I don't want to see 55-year-old Evander Holyfield getting his head caved in by a younger guy. Similarly, I don't want to see Mike Tyson getting carved up by a 27-year-old Jake Paul.
I remember and then we'll move to the NBA in a second with you, Chris, that I back in the day when I really just got started on ESPN, Peter McNeely, that the name brings up this memory. I was making fun of Peter McNeely on SportsCenter, was having a good time. And I remember looking down at the old computer system that we had. I think it was called Basis or something like that back in the day. And you would get a top line message from somebody, a coworker. I remember I got a top line message from a producer named Billy Fairweather. It was a big, New England guy, Billy Fairweather. And he just wrote me, careful making fun of Peter McNeely. And then the next one came in. His brother is a producer here at ESPN, and he ran out of space. And then the next one came back and the words were, is big. 3 messages came in, so it kept flashing, and I could,
Do you... Like that,
look out. And he, what is he? Is big. I'm like, okay, got it.
That Tyson McNeely fight was one of the very first fights I can remember watching back in, what was it, 92, 93, right after Tyson got out of jail. And I'll never forget sitting there watching it. and seeing Peter McNeely, who's from my neck of the woods, from the Boston area, face to face with Mike Tyson. And Peter's got this smile on his face, and he's bobbing left and right. And Mike Tyson's not moving. His eyes are, though. His eyes are going left to right with Peter McNeely. And I remember, even as a teenager, sitting there thinking, like, that guy's dead. Like, he's dead.
But that was every Tyson fight.
August 95.
That was essentially every Tyson
fight. Can I tell you a real quick Tyson story?
Sure.
Buddy McGirt, Hall of Fame boxer, trainer, he told me once, he trained Clifford Etienne, who fought Mike Tyson back in the 90s. And he was in the locker room with Etienne, and Cliff was like, he was motivated. He was ready. He was good to go. He's telling buddies, like, I'm going to win this fight. I'm going to win this fight. I'm ready. I'm going to knock this guy out. Gets in the ring. He's the first one to go in the ring. Next up, lights go out. The DMX music or whatever it is plays. Yep. Here comes Mike Tyson. Got that half-cut towel over his neck. Takes it off. Throws it on the ground. Glares at Cliff. And Buddy goes, in that moment, I could literally see Cliff's spirit leave his body. And that was it. First round, Clifford Etienne gets knocked out.
I mean, you name it. Every even media types. I remember Jeremy Schaap told me a story once about how Tyson was at a press conference where an old school one where people were saying who they were before their question and saying who they were affiliated with. And somebody introduced themselves as being with UPI. And he refused to answer the question. And the guy's like, "What? Why won't you answer my question?" And Tyson said, "Because you messed up the delivery of my package." That actually happened. I mean, we could go on and on here. Okay, so what do you make of last night's Celtics and Nuggets game? If this was the NFL, we would be hair on fire. How the Celtics are not going to win it all because in the same way that the Cowboys couldn't get past the Niners. That might be a poor analogy, but I don't know if we make anything of this. Do we?
My takeaway is the Celtics can't beat Denver because, I mean, Jason Tatum wide open, 40 seconds left with a chance to take a lead. He's making that shot 8 times out of 10. So the Celtics are right there at the end against Denver. The takeaway, though, is right now, Denver's the best team in either conference. I mean, Denver doesn't have the most wins in the West, but they are the best team in the West. They're a team that pretty much saw the calendar turn to mid-February, and was like, okay, let's play now. They've got 7 wins since the All-Star break. They have been rolling along. Nikola Jokic is putting up outstanding numbers. Michael Porter Jr. is putting up outstanding numbers. Their young players are starting to take off again. You watch Peyton Watson in that game last night. Second-year guy. Looks like he's a third or fourth-year guy able to play big minutes in the postseason. They are as complete a team as there is in the NBA right now.
So Jokic is your MVP?
I have said that I want to see how the regular season winds up in the West. Right now, the top 2 guys on my ballot are Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I saw Shai play in LA a couple of nights ago. Not his best game, not a great game for the Thunder. But if Oklahoma City, which had 0 expectations to be this good coming into the season, if they wind up as the number 1 seed in the West, and Shai, who is putting up the kind of numbers that we haven't seen since Michael Jordan's heyday in the late 80s, early 90s, and haven't seen since Steph Curry's unanimous MVP year. If he's putting up those kind of numbers and they're the number 1 seed in the West, going to be really tough not to vote for him.
Let me throw one out for you here that's kind of crazy if you keep that standings up for one more second here out West. What if the Clippers wind up being the 1 seed? Nobody's talking about Kawhi, right?
Yeah, and believe me, I get that from Clippers people all the time. Why are we talking about him? Why is he not?
They've got 40 wins. They're 3 games behind the Timberwolves right now. I mean, there's definitely enough time in the next month for the Clippers to just keep winning more than not. I think they're just two losses out right now.
I think the only argument against him is perhaps his numbers are not going to be what Jokic, what Shai, what Luka are.
But that's not his style, right? I mean,
no,
but it's just everything else that might not show up on a stat sheet, or a defensive stop that doesn't show up on a stat sheet, He's the best 2-way player in that MVP race right now, although Shai is really good on both ends. And he has been part of
the reason the Clippers have been able to seamlessly integrate James Harden. A lot of that credit goes to James Harden. A lot of that credit goes to Russell Westbrook, who's taken on a lesser role this year with Harden in the mix. But it's the end result is that his numbers are not going to be on the level of some of the other guys he's competing with. So if you're looking for the argument against him, it's probably those numbers right at the top.
Well, Anthony Edwards had a final 90 seconds last night in a game, obviously, that for 4 quarters was outstanding as well, where he basically took it over, both ends of the floor. And so, Andrew Nembhard's trying to tie the game, and Edwards hit his head on the back of the rim. Is that what happened?
I mean, one of the great blocks that we've seen all season long. Right. One of the great blocks we've seen in years. I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns said over All-Star Weekend that Anthony Edwards is going to be the next face of the NBA. And the more you watch Anthony Edwards, the more you believe that, because he is the complete package, right? He can score, he can rebound, he can distribute. His shooting numbers are really good. And he's a two-way player, as we saw at the end of the game last night. So, it's good that he's getting that type of exposure because he does have face of the NBA type potential. So
when we expect Karl-Anthony Towns back, what do you think for me?
I mean, first, can we just say brutal for Minnesota?
I know. When I had not heard it until Chris told me in the middle of the show yesterday, because I've just been so in the tank with so many other things going on. It just gutted me, man, to hear that. But is it possible first round of the playoffs? He can come back?
The way the Wolves are framing it is that they'll evaluate him in about 4 weeks, which puts you at right around the end of the regular season, maybe a week or so to go. So it's certainly possible he can be back for the first round of the playoffs, but it's a meniscus tear. It's a knee. Nobody really knows how his body's going to respond to it. Nobody really knows how long the ramp up is going to be to get him back out there. And look, all that injury certainly shakes up the entire Western Conference landscape, because now if you're one of the play-in teams, and there are some big names in that play-in mix, Golden State's there, the Lakers are there, you've got Phoenix is there. Now you're looking at Minnesota thinking, all right, Towns is either going to be out or working his way back in that first round. You want that 8 seed. If they're number 1, and look, a lot can happen next month. They might drop to 3 or 4. I mean, it's that close at the top.
Right.
But I think you're going to start seeing, or you will see towards the end of this month, early next month, teams starting to look at Minnesota saying, all right, how do we get that matchup in the first round if we know Towns is going to be out?
Chris Mannix here on the Rich Eisen Show. What about the other injured stars and how to expect their returns over the next 3-4 weeks for the playoffs? Who else you got for me?
Who are we talking about
here?
Got
Julius Randle for the Knicks?
Randle will be back. Yeah. I mean, look, the Knicks, everybody, cheered the Knicks when they made all these deals, right? They get OG Anunoby, which is a great deal. They get Bogdanović, good deal. They get Alec Burks, good deal. None of that really matters, though, in the playoffs. Depth is the most overrated thing, I believe, in the postseason. In the postseason, it really comes down to your stars outplaying their stars. So, for my money, Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle have to outplay Damian Lillard and Giannis, have to outplay Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, have to outplay Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And that's been a problem for the Knicks in recent years. Julius Randle, the numbers are there. He has been bad in the postseason. Jalen Brunson's scoring numbers were good last year, but look at his three-point shooting. It went from low 40s to low 30s. That's got to change. So while I applaud Leon Rose for doing what they did to stretch out the depth, and I think OG, as a defender, is going to make a big impact, this is going to come down to Brunson and Randle proving they're a better 1-2 than the other 1-2s out there.
And meanwhile, they might have to play an opening round series on the road in Orlando. We had Jamal Mosley on yesterday. I really enjoyed our conversation when he was on yesterday. I mean, how real could this run? You know what I'm saying? I understand we just established the Celtics are the Celtics, and you got the Bucks and the Cavs feel destined with the Strus throwing one in from 60 feet and then coming back on the Celtics like they did. And we're not even, mentioning the Sixers out there until I just said those words. Well, what about some of these teams like the Magic that nobody were talking about?
Well, the success for the Magic is winning a first-round series, right? It's unrealistic to expect a team this young to go into a second-round matchup with Boston or Milwaukee and win. They're just not there yet. But I think they have enough to win a first-round series. Defensively, they're great. They've been great all season long. Offensively, they have really turned a corner over the last 10 games or so. Their efficiency numbers have gone way up. Franz Wagner, very good player, really good player. Paolo Banchero, really good player. Like, they have got some horses there. And while they're an efficient three-point shooting team, they're not a high-volume three-point shooting team. So they're looking for the best shots wherever they're coming from, and they're able to cobble together enough offense to get it done that way. So if you couple that with great defense and good enough offense, it might be enough to beat a Cleveland team in the first round. It might be enough to beat the Knicks in the first round. So I think they're in play to win a first-round series.
Okay, but after that, it'll be we're back in a pumpkin.
To me, it's you're barreling towards a Milwaukee-Boston conference finals.
And then in the West, what do you got?
Denver will be there no matter what.
Nuggets and
put them in a Sharpie in the conference finals.
It's tough to not sit here and think the Clippers straight up. And because not only in the same way that you had mentioned, hey, credit to Kawhi, credit to Harden, credit to Russell Westbrook. I mean, Ty Lue is one of the best out there.
He is. He deserves. He won't get a good look. Coach of the Year is the easiest vote ever. It's Mark Daigneault in Oklahoma City. That might be unanimous. It should be unanimous. Right. I mean, they're the number or close to the number one seed right now. Look, the Clippers, Paul George will show up, I think, in the playoffs. Kawhi Leonard will show up in the playoffs. What do we get out of James Harden in the playoffs? That's a big question with them. Harden has been fantastic for that group. When I talk to people inside the Clippers, they bring up how long they've been looking for a distributor. All the point guards they've gone through, Rajon Rondo, John Wall, Russell Westbrook, they have not been able to find anyone to aptly man that position. James Harden has done that. You look at how they've been able to close games. I think there's something like 32-2 or something like that when leading after the third quarter. A lot of that's a credit to James Harden, who is able to, run the offense effectively late in games. So if Harden continues this trend, if he can be this guy in the postseason, they've got a chance to get to the conference finals. I'm not sure anybody's beaten Denver, but if this is the Clipper team that gets into the postseason, the conference finals is definitely there.
All right. And what did Barkley say yesterday? What did he say about the Celtics? He said again,
if they don't win, it's like not a choke. He didn't use the word choke. He used a different word.
Big failure, didn't he say that?
Yeah, basically just like they need to win the championship.
It's not a failure, I don't think. Look, it's a failure if they don't get to the NBA Finals and if they're not competitive in the NBA Finals. If they wind up going up against Denver and losing in 6 or 7 games.
Total gag job is what he called it.
There you go. Okay.
Well, here's the problem. When people get down on Boston, it's when they have three-point shooting nights like they had last night. I forgot the numbers off the top of my head, but it wasn't very good. Every 6 weeks or so.
Like 11-37?
Yeah. Every 6 weeks ago, the Celtics have one of these games, right? The shots just aren't falling. Sometimes the defense, sometimes themselves. But every 6 weeks, that happens. Yeah. In the previous games, though, they're high percentage, top 5 in the NBA in three-point shooting. They're high volume. And if you can be high percentage and high volume from three-point range, you're going to keep chucking them up. How did they get back in this game in the second half? It's because Porzingis came out and nailed back-to-back threes to start the game. How did they close the gap in the fourth quarter? It's because Jrue Holiday made back-to-back threes. They are a three-point shooting team and always will be. They'll live by it. They'll die by it. And because they have real three-point shooters, more often than not, they're going to be successful.
Lakers or Warriors go further?
I would say Golden State. They've won, 14 of their last 18.
Draymond triple-doubled, man. I mean, that's the old school right there.
I worry about Golden State against bigger teams because if you're going to play Draymond that much at the 5, bigger team's going to beat you down. And if they wind up with Denver in the first round, that's going to go badly for them.
I hear you, but Giannis, they were shutting him down, right? Non-stop the other night. Yeah. He every single time he was backing down somebody smaller than them. He had to pass it. He had to get rid of it.
They were motivated. They were coming off a 52-point loss.
That's true.
They were motivated coming into that game. They're back at home. It was a great win. Don't get me wrong, but I think against bigger teams, they're going to have a problem. The Lakers, though. I'm sure. Look, I was here this time last year talking about the Lakers are going to make the NBA Finals. I bought into the Lakers after all the trades. I'm not there with this team now. I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that they're going to be able to get it together to beat a top tier team. They are what they are, Rich. They're middle of the pack offensively. I think they're still middle of the pack defensively. They're a middle of the pack three-point shooting team. They're a very average team who have 2 elite players who can close games for you. But am I buying D'Angelo Russell in the postseason yet? Not really. Am I buying Austin Reeves playing better than he has this season? Not really. I just don't see enough to make me believe that team can make a run.
Thanks for coming, brother.
Anytime.
Yeah, I loved it. I had no idea we'd be talking Tyson, Jake Paul as much as we did,
Neither
but it is fascinating. There's no doubt about it. Hour number 3 coming up. You've got what's more likely, right? I've got a top 5 Saquon Barkley destinations list. Mark Consuelos is in the green room. We'll talk about the Oscars and, of course, Michigan athletics. His son is a wrestler there. And I appreciate you coming on here. Let me know anytime you're back in town. You've always got a spot here. That's Chris Mannix right here on the Rich Eisen Show on a busy Friday. We've got about a minute plus left here on Roku. You mentioned Karl-Anthony Towns saying Anthony Edwards is going to be the face of the NBA. Isn't that Scotty Barnes? Didn't I hear that?
A lot of faces of the NBA.
No, I thought that was Coach Darko in his fantastic rant, right? When he had 2 free throws to the Lakers, $90 million.
Remember that game? Was that
Remember
game?
that one? You were at that game. He came out and Scotty
Right.
Barnes is the face of the NBA. God, I love
Good
that.
player. Yeah. Edwards, I think, better chance being.
Hi, Reg.
Chris, real quick before you go, can we talk about Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia? I saw you sitting at that one interview.
I don't know what's going on with Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia is, it looks like he's in the middle of a nervous breakdown. And no one seems to be willing to pull the plug on this fight. I am a huge Ryan Garcia fan, always have been, but he's out there talking about the Illuminati and he's talking about all these conspiracy theories. And look, putting that aside, he's not in the mental, doesn't look like he's in the mental place to be ready for a fight on the level of Devin Haney. So I have my concerns about Ryan.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on here, man. Fantastic. Where are you going next?
Lakers Bucks tonight.
Lakers
Yes.
Bucks.
Lakers.
I don't know, man. How'd you do? Errors and omissions.
Nothing.
Perfect.
I got no
clean
notes.
sheet.
No notes.
Clean. All right. First time
Clean
in a long
sheet.
time.
Clean
All
sheet.
right, wow.
Well done.
Well done.
Somebody on Twitter will find it.
That's true. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.